you love movies and movie discussions, you've come to the right place. Who am I, you ask? I am the Wiz, and I'm here today to review the 2024 sports drama Challenger, starring Zendaya, Mike Faust, and Josh O'Connor, directed by Luca Guadagnino. Tashi, a tennis player turned coach, played by Zendaya, has transformed her husband Art, played by Mike Faust, from a mediocre player into a world-famous Grand Slam champion. To jolt him out of his recent losing streak, he makes him play a Challenger event, which is the lowest level of tournament on the Pro Tour. Tensions soon run high when he finds himself standing across the net from the once promising, now burnt-out Patrick, played by Josh O'Connor, his former best friend and Tashi's former boyfriend. So if you've seen the marketing of this movie, you would probably think this is much more of a sultry, sexy kind of movie, and it really is not that. There is a little bit of it, but honestly, this is a story about codependency, manipulation, and competition. This is one of the best things about this movie, because you're probably thinking, oh, okay, it's about Coach and her trying to motivate her best player. And it is, but it isn't. Well, no, let me rephrase that. It is, but it's about so much more. If you've seen the movie, you probably think the story of codependency is really about Mike Faust's character, Art, and his wife, Tashi. That is correct, but it's also about Tashi and Patrick, and how Patrick seems to be a little codependent on her, too. And then when you think back about it, you think, well, wait a minute, Tashi needs them both, because that's the only way that she feels like she's worth something. So there's that codependency there that is wrapped around all these characters. The other is manipulation. Now, you think it's probably just Tashi manipulating Art, or even manipulating Patrick. But really, it's also Patrick manipulating the two. And there's also parts where Art is manipulating Tashi. The film does this incredibly good job of taking these themes and not sticking it to one character, but making it believable enough and also making it entertaining enough where it all fits together incredibly well. The other main thing about this film is competition. You would think that, okay, well, the competition is about tennis, about these tennis players trying to be the best. And yes, that's there. It's definitely there. But there's also the competition of Tashi wanting to be the best. What does she want to be the best at? You would think tennis. Well, that's not exactly what happens in this movie. And I'm not going to spoil much more about it, but I will say that the way that they meld the competitive spirit of these characters into these incredibly toxic personalities that just ping-pong back at each other is one of the biggest highlights of this film, and it's why it's so damn entertaining, and it is really well done in this movie. What I also think is really well done is the use of energetic music, which fits incredibly well in this film. Now, when you're thinking energetic music, you're thinking, okay, so this is for like the competitive scene, to really spark up the adrenaline of those scenes. Not necessarily. And this is the thing about this film. It uses elements that you would think of sports movies. There's, okay, so this is for this. The answer is always not necessarily, because the energetic, thumping, techno-style music with heavy bass you would think would be for those competitive scenes. It's really for dialogue mostly, where Tashi is dressing people down, or when Patrick is starting to manipulate his way in. It's those things that have that music, and it ups the pressure of what's going on in the movie. And I think it's brilliantly done. Okay, so let's get into the performances. I think all three performances are fantastic. So let's start with Mike Faust's character, Art. His is really the least interesting of the three, but I think that the way he portrays Art is very good. He has this sensitivity and this feeling of being lost throughout the film, not even when he is in his slump, but when he's younger too. It really gives you this feeling of a character that needs direction and finds it in Tashi, which is also a woman that he desperately loves, and that shows very well in this movie. I think Josh O'Connor's performance is better, though, as Patrick. Him as this, like, incredibly arrogant but really screwed up guy who seems to think he is really smart and really good, but honestly, he's actually much more deluded than that. I think his performance in some spots is funny, but honestly, the performance of the film is Zendaya as Tashi. She drives this movie forward with every scene in this movie. Like, I know what this is being called as like a star-making film for her. I think her star-making role was Euphoria, and maybe even Spider-Man. But Spider-Man doesn't show enough of her talent, and Euphoria is nothing I haven't seen. So when I saw this, I was like, oh, I get why people love her now. Like, I see it. Because she is excellent in this movie. She's sexy when she has to be sexy. She's manipulative when she has to be manipulative. When she's the villain, she plays it really well. When she's the support system, she's playing that as well. She plays this incredibly multifaceted character incredibly well with no weak spots. This really is a star-making role. This is an incredible performance. In terms of performances I've seen in the past few years, I wouldn't say it's equal to Cate Blanchett's in Tar, but it's close. It's actually an incredibly well-done performance. Okay, so I do have have a couple of issues with this movie. One is the questionable use of cinematography and camera movement in some scenes. This is kind of a nitpick, but there are certain scenes where they use slow down or they use certain types of camera angles that I don't think it really resonates very well with the story. There's a specific scene with Tashi and Patch where they do this slow down of the movie, and I just don't entirely understand why it's there. When it comes to cinematography, though, I think the worst scene of the film is the ending, where they have the end of that tennis match. I just don't think it really fits well with the tension of the scene. What they do is they do the scene underneath the court. They do a first-person view, and neither of them work. I watch it and goes, why would do this? This doesn't work at all. It doesn't really have any tension, and then the way that the ball moves. And now that we're getting to the ending, I think the ending was botched in this movie. Something about this ending didn't sit right with me. I do like ambiguous endings. I know a lot of people have a problem with ambiguous endings, but the film tries to play it off as ambiguous when really it is not. But I guess the interesting thing would be is, would Art still stay with Tashi? Would Patrick horn in even more to be with Tashi? And I think if you pay attention to the characters, you already know the answer to those questions, which left this ambiguous ending to be kind of unnecessary, I think. I'm not saying it has to be incredibly straightforward, but I think to just end it the way it did and the way that it was shot and everything, I just didn't think it fit well with the rest of the film. Some might disagree, but I think that the ending could have been a lot better. Okay, so here's the thing. When I left the film, I was really willing to give it a highly recommended. And honestly, I was thinking this is probably one of the better films I've seen this year at first watch. But overall, I'm just going to recommend Challengers. Challengers does a lot of great things. The performances are great, especially Zendaya. The way that the screenplay is done is also expertly well done. This should be a frontrunner for the Oscars, for screenplay at least. It is just an incredibly well done screenplay. That said, an ending can ruin a story. And I don't think it entirely ruins the film, but it does leave a bad taste in my mouth at the end of the film. So overall, I am going to recommend Challengers, but I will say this. For some people, this would be an easily highly recommend. I think it's a great film. I've seen some reviews that kind of dogpile on this movie, but I think this is excellent. So if you haven't gotten a chance to see this yet, it's on Amazon Prime, so check it out if you haven't. I think it's a great movie. Now, if you want my full review on this movie, you can go to my website at IamTheWiz.com. You'll have my full written review right on the site, along with a link to the video that has this review that you've just listened to. All right, so for Thursday, me and Zero are going to be reviewing Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, directed by George Miller. Saturday, I'll be reviewing Star Trek Beyond, directed by Justin Lin. And on Tuesday, I'm going to continue watching movies from this year. The next one is The Fall Guy, directed by David Leitch. I honestly don't know much about this movie, to be fair. Like, I'll be honest with you. I stopped paying attention to recent movies. I've just completely stopped paying attention to it. So I've heard this is all right. Got Ryan Gosling, Emily Blunt in it. It looks fun, so I thought I'd check that out. So on Thursday, me and Zero are going to be reviewing Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, directed by George Miller. Saturday, Star Trek Beyond, directed by Justin Lin. And Tuesday, The Fall Guy, directed by David Leitch. I am The Wiz, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.